I wasn't invited to my daughter's wedding in Paris, the same wedding I helped pay for. She told me by text, Mom said if you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Earth window. So I just said, sure, enjoy your big day. The next morning, she wouldn't stop calling me. But me? I was way too busy to pick up. The notification came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in my home office, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city, the one I designed specifically so I could watch the lights come on at dusk. When my phone lit up on the desk beside my coffee mug, I'd been reviewing acquisition reports for the third time that week, red pen in hand, classical music playing low through the speakers. Dvořák, always Dvořák when I needed to think. The preview showed Emma's name, my daughter, 26 years old, living in London with her fiancé Marcus, planning a wedding that had consumed the last 18 months of our lives. Or rather, the last 18 months of my financial contributions and her mother's creative control. I picked up the phone. Hey, Dad, so Mom and I finalized the guest list for Paris. We had to make some cuts because the venue has capacity limits, and honestly, it's just going to be immediate family and close friends. Mom said if you want to be a part of it, you can watch through the Google Earth window, lol. But yeah, we'll send you pics after. Love you, XXX. I read it twice. Then I set the phone down, very carefully, and stared at it like it might suddenly sprout legs and walk away. The classical music continued. Dvořák's New World Symphony. Third movement. I'd always found it melancholic but hopeful. Tonight it just sounded far away, like it was playing in someone else's house, in someone else's life. I picked up my red pen, put it down. Picked up my coffee, set it down without drinking. Then I picked up the phone again and typed out a response, my thumbs moving with the kind of steadiness that comes from years of high-stakes negotiations where emotion is a liability and composure is currency. Sure, enjoy your big day. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone, finished my coffee in 3 long swallows, and went back to the acquisition reports because at least numbers made sense. At least numbers didn't pretend to love you while erasing you from the most important day of their lives with a LOL and a kiss-kiss emoji. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't always announce itself with shouting or broken dishes. Sometimes it arrives in lowercase letters and abbreviations, dressed up as casualness, as if the emotional violence of it can be softened by informality, as if saying LOL makes it hurt less. It doesn't. Let me back up. My name is David Sterling. I'm 53 years old. I've been divorced for 12 years. I have one daughter, Emma, who I raised with her mother, Claire, until Emma was 14, at which point Claire decided she'd rather raise Emma with her new partner, a woman named Rebecca, who worked in marketing and had opinions about everything from cheese to child rearing. The divorce was Claire's idea. The custody arrangement was Claire's idea. The slow, systematic erosion of my relationship with my daughter was, well, that happened so gradually that I didn't notice it was a strategy until it was already complete. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After the divorce, I threw myself into work. I was already successful. I'd built my consulting firm from nothing, specialized in corporate restructuring and turnaround strategies for failing companies. I was good at seeing what was broken and fixing it. I was good at making hard calls and living with the consequences. What I wasn't good at was fighting a custody battle against a mother who painted herself as the stable, nurturing parent and painted me as the workaholic father who'd chosen his career over his family. Never mind that someone had to pay for the house Claire wanted to keep. Never mind that someone had to fund Emma's private school tuition and her writing lessons and her university education. I got every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. Claire got everything else. For a while it worked. Emma was resilient. She video called me when she was at her mother's. She told me about school and horses and her friends. We had our routines, our inside jokes. She still called me her favorite problem solver when she needed help with homework or life advice. Then she turned 16 and something shifted. The calls became less frequent. The weekend visits started getting canceled. Mom planned something. I have plans with friends. Can we reschedule? I told myself it was normal. She was a teenager. Teenagers pulled away. But then she went to university, King's College London, studying international relations, full ride funded by yours truly. And the distance became more than geographical. She'd go weeks without responding to texts. She'd make plans to visit and cancel at the last minute. And when we did see each other, there was this politeness to her. Like I was a distant relative she was obligated to be nice to rather than her father. I tried asking her about it once, during a rare dinner in London when she was in her second year. Is everything okay between us? I'd said over pasta at some trendy Shoreditch restaurant she'd chosen. You seem distant lately. She'd looked at me with genuine confusion. Everything's fine, Dad. I'm just busy with school. It's more than that. It's really not. And that was that. Because what was I supposed to say? Your mother has been poisoning you against me for years, and I can prove it by the way you flinch every time I ask to be involved in your life. That's not a conversation you can have over carbonara. So I learned to accept the new normal. I learned to be grateful for whatever crumbs of relationship she offered. I learned to fund her life from a distance and tell myself that love didn't require proximity or warmth or even basic respect. I learned to be optional. The wedding planning started 2 years ago. Emma called me, actually called, which was rare, and announced she was engaged. Marcus had proposed in front of the Trevi Fountain in Rome. Very romantic. Very Instagram ready. She was over the moon. I was invited to meet Marcus officially over dinner. He was 31, worked in finance, came from old money in Hampshire, polite, well-dressed, had a firm handshake and made eye contact when he talked to you, which I appreciated. He called me sir until I told him not to. The wedding planning began immediately. Emma wanted a destination wedding. Claire wanted it to be elegant but not ostentatious. Marcus's family wanted it to be traditional but not stuffy. And I wanted to pay for it. Not because I was asked, not because there was any discussion about whether I should or even could afford it, but because that's what fathers do, isn't it? That's what I'd been taught. You show love through provision. You show commitment through financial support. You earn your place at the table by footing the bill. So when Claire called me 3 months into the planning and said, David, we need to talk about the budget, and I said, send me the numbers. She did. The venue, a chateau outside Paris. Cost, $45,000 for the weekend, including accommodation for 50 guests, the catering, Michelin-starred chef. Cost, $28,000. The flowers, designed by some French florist who'd done work for Fashion Week. Cost, $12,000. The dress, custom Vera Wang. Cost, £15,000. The photographer and videographer, an award-winning duo from London. Cost, $18,000. The list went on and on and on. Total estimated cost approximately $187,000. I looked at the spreadsheet Claire had sent over email, color-coded, itemized, professional, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. But I said yes, because what else was I going to say? That I couldn't afford it? I could. My firm was doing well. Very well. We just completed a major turnaround for a failing retail chain that had netted me a 7-figure bonus. That it was excessive? Maybe. But it was Emma's wedding. My only daughter. How do you put a price on that? That I should be consulted, not just invoiced. That would make me sound bitter. Petty. Like I was using money as leverage, which I wasn't. I was using money as connection, as proof that even if I wasn't wanted in the day-to-day, I could still be useful, still be necessary. So I transferred the first installment, £50,000 for the venue deposit, and told Claire to keep me updated on the costs. She did. Every few weeks, another email, another list of expenses, another request for another transfer. The invitations, £3,000 for custom calligraphy and hand-pressed paper. The entertainment, a string quartet for the ceremony and a jazz band for the reception. £9,000. The wine, cases of Premier Cru Burgundy and Champagne. Punnas, the accommodations for guests who couldn't afford the chateau, a nearby hotel subsidized by us. 11,000. The rehearsal dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Seine, 8,000. The honeymoon. 2 weeks in the Maldives, my gift to them, $23,000. I kept saying yes. I kept transferring money. And I kept waiting for someone, Emma, Claire, Marcus, anyone, to say thank you, to acknowledge what I was doing, to include me in the planning beyond being a human ATM. It never happened. Oh, I was informed of decisions. Claire would email me updates. We've chosen the menu. We've finalized the flowers. We've confirmed the photographer. But I was never consulted, never asked for input, never invited to meetings or tastings or planning sessions. When I mentioned this to Emma during one of our increasingly rare phone calls, she laughed it off. Dad, you're so busy with work. We didn't want to bother you with all the boring details. Besides, Mom's been amazing at handling everything. Translation: you're useful for money, but not for presents. I didn't push it. I never pushed anything with Emma anymore because I had learned that pushing led to distance, and distance was the last thing I could afford. So I kept quiet, kept signing checks, kept telling myself that when the wedding day came, it would all be worth it. That seeing Emma happy, seeing her walk down the aisle, getting to dance with my daughter at her reception, that would make all of this worthwhile. I held on to that image like a lifeline, right up until the moment she texted me to say I could watch from Google Earth. The days after that text were strange. I didn't call Emma, didn't call Claire, didn't reach out to Marcus or his family or anyone else involved in the wedding planning. I just went quiet. I showed up at my office, I ran my meetings, I reviewed my reports, I negotiated contracts and managed my team and did all the things I'd always done because work, at least, was reliable. Work didn't uninvite you to things you'd paid for. Work didn't mock you with LOL and suggest you watch important moments through a satellite imaging service. My assistant, Margaret, noticed something was off by day 3. You seem distracted, she said, setting a fresh coffee on my desk. Margaret had been with me for 15 years. She was 62, sharp as a blade, and had an uncanny ability to read my moods. I'm fine, I said. You've been staring at that same page for 20 minutes. I glanced down. She was right. I hadn't absorbed a single word. Personal matter, I said. She waited. Margaret was good at waiting. It was one of her superpowers, the ability to create silence that demanded truth. My daughter's getting married, I said finally. That's wonderful. In Paris, 3 weeks from now. How exciting. I'm not invited. Margaret's expression didn't change, but something sharpened in her eyes. I see. I've paid for the entire thing, nearly £200,000. Venue, food, dress, honeymoon, everything. I see, she said again, but differently this time. She told me via text that I could watch through Google Earth if I wanted to be part of it. Margaret set down the papers she'd been holding. Do you have a lawyer? This isn't a legal matter. Perhaps it should be. It's my daughter's wedding, Margaret, not a corporate dispute. Nevertheless, I shook my head. I'm not going to sue my daughter for the right to attend her wedding. Can you imagine? Father takes daughter to court over wedding invitation. That would go over brilliantly in the press. Then what will you do? That was the question, wasn't it? What would I do? I could call Emma, demand an explanation, insist that I be included, make a scene, play the victim. But I'd learned long ago that demanding things from Emma only pushed her further into Claire's camp. Claire had spent years positioning herself as the reasonable parent, the one who didn't make waves or create drama. Any attempt I made to assert myself would be twisted into proof that I was controlling, demanding, difficult. I could refuse to pay the remaining balance. Hold the money hostage until they changed their minds, but that would be exactly what Claire had always accused me of. Using money as leverage, treating relationships like transactions. And more than that, it would hurt Emma. Whatever anger I felt toward her, I didn't want to ruin her wedding. I didn't want to be the reason she looked back on this day with bitterness. I could just accept it, show up anyway, force them to acknowledge me, make them physically turn me away at the door. But that felt pathetic, desperate, like showing up to a party where you weren't wanted and pretending not to notice everyone wishing you'd leave. Or I could do exactly what I'd told Emma I'd do. Enjoy her big day, from a distance, while being way too busy to pick up. Margaret was still watching me when I looked up. I need you to clear my schedule, I said. For the wedding? For the month. Her eyebrows rose. The entire month? I'm taking personal leave, starting tomorrow. David, you'll handle things while I'm gone. You're more than capable. Of course I am, but I need to be away from here, away from all of this. And I need to do something I should have done years ago. Which is, I smiled. It probably looked more like baring teeth. Stop being optional. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not Margaret, beyond basic emergency contact information. Not my business partners. Not the handful of friends I'd maintained over the years, most of whom were really just colleagues I occasionally had dinner with, and certainly not Emma or Claire. Instead, I went home, packed a bag, and booked a flight to Paris. Because if Emma wanted me to watch her wedding from Google Earth, I was going to give her exactly what she asked for: a father who was present in name only. Watching from such a distance, he might as well be a satellite orbiting the Earth. But unlike a satellite, I wasn't going to be passive. I was going to be busy. Very, very busy. The flight to Paris left the next morning. Business class. Because I'd stopped pretending to be modest about money years ago. If you have it, use it. If you've earned it, enjoy it. I'd earned this. I landed at Charles de Gaulle at noon and took a car to the Hotel Plaza Athénée in the 8th arrondissement. 5-star. Overlooking Avenue Montaigne. The kind of place where the staff remembered your name after one visit and the concierge could get you into restaurants that didn't technically have openings. I checked in, went up to my suite, corner room, view of the Eiffel Tower in the distance, and unpacked methodically. Suits, casual wear, running shoes because I still ran every morning, rain or shine, laptop, files. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and made a list. This is what successful people do when faced with impossible situations. They make lists. They break down the overwhelming into the manageable. They turn emotion into action items. My list had 3 main objectives. 1. Attend Emma's wedding without actually attending Emma's wedding. 2. Ensure she knows I was there and that I chose not to participate. 3. Make the weekend about something more important than being uninvited to an overpriced ceremony. The first objective was easy. The chateau where Emma was getting married was called Chateau de Montclair, about an hour outside Paris in the Valley de Chevreuse. I'd never been there. Of course, I hadn't been included in the venue tour, but I'd looked it up after receiving Claire's budget spreadsheet. Historic estate, 17th century architecture, sprawling gardens, 35 guest rooms, a chapel on the grounds that could seat up to 80 people. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, 3 weeks from now. Ceremony at 4 p.m. in the chapel. Reception immediately following in the grand ballroom. I could easily book a hotel nearby. Show up. Watch from a distance. Make sure Emma saw me. Just enough to know I'd honored her invitation to be part of it from afar. But that felt too passive, too sad. Like a dog waiting outside the door of a house it used to live in. I needed something more. The second objective required more thought. How do you let someone know you were present without actually being present? How do you make your absence more notable than your presence would have been? I opened my laptop and started researching. Chateau de Montclair had a website. Professional, elegant. Photos of the grounds, the chapel, the ballroom. A virtual tour option. Google Earth, as Emma had so helpfully suggested. I pulled up the satellite view. There it was. The chateau, looking like a miniature toy from this height. The chapel clearly visible on the east side of the property. The gardens stretching out behind the main building. I zoomed in as far as the resolution would allow. Then I zoomed out and started looking at the surrounding area. The chateau was situated in a valley, surrounded by forests and small villages. The nearest town was Chevreuse, population maybe 5,000, picturesque, quiet. And about 2 kilometers from the chateau, on a hillside, with clear sightlines to the property, was what looked like a cleared area, maybe an old vineyard, maybe just an open field. I made a note. Then I picked up the phone and called a number I hadn't used in 5 years. David Sterling, the voice on the other end said, surprised but pleased. I thought you died. Hello, Richard. Richard Beaumont and I had worked together years ago on a particularly nasty corporate takeover. He was a fixer, the kind of person who knew people, who could make things happen that technically weren't supposed to be possible, all while maintaining plausible deniability. And he'd moved to Paris 8 years ago and started a consulting firm that specialized in what he called bespoke solutions for unique problems. I suspected it was at least half legitimate. To what do I owe the pleasure? Richard asked. I need your help with something. How illegal are we talking? Not at all. Completely legal. Just unusual. My favorite kind. Tell me everything. I did. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Richard started laughing. You're serious. Completely. This is the most elaborate fuck you I've ever heard. It's not a fuck you, it's a statement. It's absolutely a fuck you, but I love it. Give me 3 days. I'll need everything in place in 2 weeks. Consider it done. This is going to cost you, though. Money isn't an issue. I know. That's why I like working with you. He hung up. I sat back and looked out the window at Paris spreading out below me, the afternoon light turning everything golden and soft. Objective 2, in progress. The third objective was the hardest. Make the weekend about something more important than being uninvited to an overpriced ceremony. This was where I had to be honest with myself about what was really happening. Because yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was angry. Yes, there was a part of me that wanted Emma to know exactly how deeply this cut, how profoundly she'd wounded me. But beneath the hurt and anger was something else, relief. Because for the first time in 12 years, I had permission to stop pretending. I didn't have to pretend that the custody arrangement was fair, that the parenting alienation hadn't happened, that Claire hadn't spent over a decade systematically erasing me from Emma's life while I funded every step of the process. I didn't have to pretend that Emma's distance was just teenage independence or young adult busyness rather than learned behavior. I didn't have to pretend that my role as father hadn't been reduced to bank account with emotional liability. The text message, LOL, Google Earth, the casual cruelty dressed up as a joke, had finally given me something I'd needed for years. Clarity, and with clarity came freedom. The freedom to stop begging for scraps of relationship. The freedom to stop funding my own irrelevance. The freedom to redirect my energy toward people and purposes that actually valued what I had to offer beyond my bank balance. So objective 3 wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation, reclaiming my time, my resources, my self-respect, and making sure that when Emma looked back on this weekend, she understood exactly what she'd chosen when she sent that text. I spent the next week preparing. Richard called me twice with updates. The arrangements were coming together better than expected. He'd found what I needed, secured the permissions, handled the logistics. "You're sure you want to go this big?" he asked during the second call. "I'm sure. No regrets tomorrow?" "None. Good, because you can't undo this kind of gesture. I don't want to undo it. Then we're golden. I'll have everything finalized by next Friday." "Perfect." Meanwhile, I made other arrangements. I called my lawyer, not to sue anyone. Margaret's suggestion still felt absurd, but to update my will and trust documents. And Emma had been the primary beneficiary. Not anymore. I called my accountant and restructured some investments, set up a charitable foundation in my name, redirected funds that would have gone to family support into causes that actually needed them, education scholarships for underprivileged kids, corporate restructuring grants for failing small businesses, mental health support programs. I called the hotel where I'd booked rooms for Emma's wedding guests, the ones who couldn't afford the chateau, the rooms I'd paid for. I canceled the reservations and redirected those funds to a homeless shelter in Paris that provided temporary housing for families in crisis. I called the travel agency that had booked Emma and Marcus's Maldives honeymoon, canceled it, got a full refund minus the cancellation fee, donated the refund to an ocean conservation charity. With each call, each transaction, each reallocation of resources, I felt something heavy lifting off my chest. For years, I'd believed that love required sacrifice, that being a good father meant giving until it hurt, paying any price, accepting any treatment, because that's what unconditional love looked like. But I'd been wrong. Unconditional love doesn't mean accepting conditional treatment. It doesn't mean funding your own erasure. And it sure as hell doesn't mean paying £187,000 for the privilege of being mocked via text message. Emma started calling on Tuesday, 8 days before the wedding. I was in a cafe near the Louvre when my phone buzzed. Her name on the screen. I let it ring. She called again an hour later. Again, I didn't answer. That evening, 3 more calls, 2 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. Wednesday, 6 calls, 4 voicemails, 3 texts. "Dad, can you call me back, please? Dad, I need to talk to you about something important. Dad, seriously, can you please just pick up?" I deleted the texts without responding. Thursday, she called 9 times, left 7 voicemails. The texts became more urgent. "Dad, why aren't you answering? This is serious. I really need to talk to you. Dad, I'm getting worried. Is everything okay? Can you at least let me know you're alive?" I almost laughed at that last one. Now she was worried about whether I was alive. Not when she uninvited me to her wedding, not during the 18 months of planning, where I wasn't included in a single decision, but now when she needed something. Suddenly my well-being mattered. Friday, 12 calls, 10 voicemails, so many texts my phone kept buzzing like an angry wasp. Dad, this isn't funny anymore. I don't know what's going on, but we need to talk. Mom is freaking out. Please just call me back. Dad, answer your phone. I turned off notifications. Saturday, 1 week before the wedding, she tried a different approach. She called from Marcus's phone. I didn't answer that either. Then she tried Margaret. That was bold. Emma had met Margaret maybe twice in her entire life, at company events I'd brought her to when she was younger. But apparently she'd kept the number. Margaret called me around noon. Your daughter is very persistent, she said dryly. What did she want? To know if you were alive, to know where you are, to know why you're not answering. I told her I couldn't share your location or your schedule, but that you were fine and would be in touch when you were ready. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. She said it was urgent, that there was a situation with the wedding, and she needed to speak with you immediately. I felt something twist in my chest. Did she say what situation? No, and I didn't ask. I figured if it was genuinely urgent, she'd tell me. Since she didn't, I assume it's not life-threatening. Good call. David, Margaret said carefully, what are you doing? Taking my life back. By ignoring your daughter a week before her wedding? By not being available to solve whatever crisis she's suddenly decided requires my attention after uninviting me from the event. There was a pause, then, she uninvited you? I thought you weren't invited at all. Semantics. Either way, I'm watching from Google Earth, remember? Ah, another pause. Well then, shall I continue to Stonewall? Please. With pleasure. Anything else? If she calls again, you can tell her I'm very busy, too busy to pick up. Margaret laughed. Actually laughed, which was rare. I'll relay the message, verbatim. By Sunday, Emma had given up on calling. Instead, I got an email. Subject line, please read this. I opened it. Dad, I don't know why you're not answering your phone, and I'm really worried. Margaret said you're fine, but won't tell me where you are or what you're doing. I need to talk to you about something important. There's been an issue with the wedding payments. The chateau is saying there's a balance outstanding, and some of the vendors are saying their invoices haven't been paid. Mom talked to the accountant, and apparently some of the accounts that were supposed to have funds for the wedding have been, I don't know, moved, changed. She's trying to sort it out, but everything is due this week, and I'm starting to panic. I know you've been handling most of the financial stuff, and I'm so grateful for that. I don't know what we would have done without you. But right now, I really need you to call me back, or call Mom, or call someone so we can figure this out. Please, Dad. The wedding is in a week. Love, Emma. I read it twice. Then I closed the laptop and went for a run. Monday morning, Claire called. I was having breakfast at a cafe in Le Marais. Excellent croissants, strong coffee, people watching from the terrace. When my phone rang, Claire's name appeared on the screen. I considered not answering. The silent treatment was working beautifully so far. Emma was panicking. Claire was apparently freaking out, according to Emma's texts. The wedding logistics were unraveling. But I was curious. And more than that, I wanted Claire to hear my voice when I told her exactly what I thought about her role in all of this. I answered, David. Her voice was tight, controlled, the way it always got when she was angry, but trying to sound reasonable. We need to talk. Hello, Claire. Where are you? Paris. Silence. Then, you're in Paris? Beautiful city. Have you been? David, this isn't funny. Why are you in Paris? I'm on holiday. A week before Emma's wedding? Is it Emma's wedding? I wasn't aware I was invited. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear her recalculating. You're upset about the guest list. I'm not upset about anything. I'm on holiday. Emma said she texted you about the capacity limits. She did. She suggested I watch from Google Earth. So I took her advice. I'm getting a nice view from up here. That was a joke. Was it? Of course it was. Emma has a terrible sense of humor sometimes, but she didn't mean, Claire. I kept my voice pleasant, conversational. The tone I used in negotiations when I wanted the other party to understand I held all the cards. Let's not do this. Do what? Pretend that text was a joke gone wrong. Pretend that uninviting me to the wedding I've paid for was some kind of misunderstanding. Pretend that the last 12 years haven't been a systematic campaign to erase me from Emma's life while using me as a bank account. That's not, it is, and you know it. And I've been complicit in it because I thought maintaining some relationship with my daughter, any relationship, was better than none at all, but I was wrong. David, you're being dramatic. Am I? Let's talk about drama. Let's talk about telling a father he can watch his daughter's wedding via satellite imagery. Let's talk about spending 18 months planning this event without including me in a single decision beyond which account to send the invoices to. Let's talk about raising Emma to think I'm only useful when I'm writing checks. That's not fair. You were always so busy with work because someone had to pay for the house you wanted in the divorce. Someone had to pay for Emma's private school and university and every riding lesson and ski trip and summer abroad. Someone had to fund your life while you turned my daughter against me. I never turned Emma against you, didn't you? Then explain why she stopped calling, why she stopped visiting, why every interaction we have feels like she's doing me a favor rather than talking to her father. Claire's voice went cold. Maybe if you'd been around more. I was around every weekend I was supposed to have her. Every Wednesday dinner, every school event I wasn't actively blocked from attending. I was around as much as the custody arrangement you demanded allowed me to be. You could have fought harder in the divorce. I could have. And you would have used that to prove I was the controlling, aggressive ex-husband. I've seen your playbook, Claire. I know exactly how you operate. You wanted me gone, but not too gone. Present enough to fund things, but distant enough that you could play the single mother martyr. This is absurd. I'm not going to listen to. Then don't. But understand this. The wedding payments you're concerned about, the outstanding balances, the mysteriously moved funds, that was all me. I've redirected every remaining penny of wedding budget to more worthy causes, homeless shelters, scholarship funds, conservation charities, places where my money will actually be valued. You can't do that. That money was for Emma's wedding. It was my money. I can do whatever I want with it. And what I want is for Emma to understand that actions have consequences. You taught her that I'm optional, that I exist to serve her needs without requiring basic respect in return. Well, congratulations. She learned the lesson, and now she gets to experience what life looks like when the optional parent opts out. You're going to ruin her wedding? No, Claire. You already did that when you raised her to think uninviting me was acceptable. I'm just declining to finance it. She's your daughter. Is she? Because fathers get invited to their daughters' weddings. Fathers are consulted about major life decisions. Fathers are thanked for their contributions instead of mocked via text message. So either she's my daughter and I should be treated accordingly, or I'm just the man who pays for things. You don't get both. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Fast, angry. You're being incredibly selfish, she said finally. I laughed. Actually laughed. Selfish. That's rich coming from you. But sure, let's call it selfish. Let's call it petty. Let's call it whatever makes you feel better about your role in this. The fact remains, the money is gone, the wedding is underfunded, and I'm in Paris enjoying my holiday, way too busy to pick up when Emma calls. She's devastated. Is she devastated that I'm hurt, or devastated that the money isn't available? Silence. That's what I thought. David, I'm done, Claire. Done pretending, done accommodating, done funding my own erasure. You and Emma figure out the wedding costs yourselves. Between your new partner's marketing salary and Marcus's family money, I'm sure you'll manage. After all, you've been managing Emma's life without me for over a decade. What's one more event? You're going to regret this. I doubt it, but if I do, at least it'll be my choice, my terms, my life. I hung up. My coffee had gone cold. I ordered another one and sat there in the morning sun, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Emma called again that afternoon, 16 times. I didn't answer. She sent a long email, then another, then a third. I didn't read them. Tuesday, she tried Margaret again. Margaret reported that Emma was distressed and asking if there was any way to reach me for just 5 minutes. What did you tell her? I asked. That you were indisposed and would be in touch if and when your schedule permitted. Perfect. Wednesday, Marcus called. That was interesting. I'd only spoken to Marcus a handful of times. The initial meeting, a couple of phone calls during the engagement, brief pleasantries at Christmas. He'd always been polite but distant, the way you are with a future in-law you don't really know. Now he was calling me, personally. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. Marcus, I said. Mr. Sterling. His voice was strained, uncomfortable. I apologize for bothering you. I know you must be incredibly busy. I am. Right, of course. I'll be brief. It's about the wedding. I'm aware. There's been some confusion about the payments. No confusion. I've redirected the funds. May I ask why? You may. I waited. Let him ask. Make him work for it. Why have you redirected the funds? He said finally. Because I wasn't invited to the wedding. But I thought Emma said it was a capacity issue. Did she? She said the venue has strict limits and that you understood. Marcus? I kept my voice kind, almost gentle. The way you talk to someone who's been fed lies and doesn't know it yet. Did Emma tell you that the venue capacity was an issue before or after I'd paid for the venue? Silence. Before or after I'd paid for the catering, the flowers, the photographer, the accommodations, the entertainment, and your honeymoon? More silence. I paid for a wedding I wasn't invited to. You understand how that might be problematic? Yes, I do, and I want you to know that I had no idea. I assumed you were coming. Emma and Claire handled all the guest list details, and I trusted them. I see. If I'd known you weren't invited, I would have said something. I would have insisted you be there. You're Emma's father. Of course you should be at the wedding. Should I? Yes, absolutely. Then why aren't I? I don't know. I truly don't. But I'd like to fix it. If there's any way... Marcus, let me ask you something. When Emma first told you about the guest list situation, did she seem upset? He hesitated. I'm not sure I... Did she cry? Did she say it broke her heart to not have me there? Did she express any regret at all? The hesitation stretched longer. No, he admitted finally. She didn't. She just said it was a logistical issue and that you understood. Right, because I'm very understanding. I'm the understanding father who pays for everything and expects nothing in return. I'm the father you can text LOL watch from Google Earth without consequences. I'm the optional parent. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate you calling, Marcus. I genuinely do. You seem like a decent man. But this isn't your problem to solve. This is between Emma and me. And the reality is that she made a choice when she sent that text. Now I'm making mine. What choice is that? To stop being optional. I could hear him breathing, thinking. I understand, he said quietly. I don't agree, but I understand. That's all I can ask. Enjoy your wedding, Marcus. I hope it's everything you both hoped for. Will you... Is there any chance you'll reconsider? About the funds, I mean. We can fix the guest list. We can... No? No? The money is gone, Marcus. Donated, reallocated. Whatever the wedding costs now, it's your and Emma's responsibility. Yours and the families who actually want me present. Good luck. I hung up. My phone rang again immediately. Emma. I powered it off. Thursday, Richard called my room at the hotel. Everything's set, he said. Want to do a final walkthrough? Absolutely. We met at a cafe near Trocadero. Richard looked the same as always. Expensive suit, graying hair, the kind of face that could smile warmly at you while negotiating terms that would quietly ruin you. He slid a tablet across the table. Your toy. I looked at the screen. Schematics, permits, photographs, lists of equipment and personnel. It's bigger than I expected, I said. You said make a statement. I'm making a statement. Will it be visible from the chateau? Visible? David, it'll be impossible to miss. Weather's supposed to be clear on Saturday. Perfect conditions. And it's all legal? Completely. I've got permits from the local aviation authority and the commune. Filed all the paperwork under your name and company. Everything's above board. Good. You're sure you want to do this? I looked at the schematics again, smiled, positive. Then we're golden. I'll have my team in position by Friday evening. Saturday morning, we'll do final checks. By the time the ceremony starts at 4 p.m., you'll be all set. Perfect. He leaned back, studying me. You know, in all the years I've known you, I don't think I've ever seen you like this. Like what? Calm. Usually when someone comes to me with a revenge plot, they're angry, manic, emotional. You're just serene. Because this isn't revenge. No. Revenge implies wanting to hurt someone. I don't want to hurt Emma. I want her to understand. Understand what? That actions have consequences, that you can't treat people as disposable and expect them to remain available. That love, real love, requires more than just sharing DNA and cashing checks. Richard nodded slowly. Fair enough. Though I gotta say, from where I'm sitting, this looks an awful lot like revenge. Then maybe you're sitting too close, he laughed. Maybe I am. Either way, Saturday's going to be memorable. That's the idea. Friday morning, I took the train out to Chevreuse. I wanted to see the area in person, wanted to understand the geography, wanted to feel the place where Emma had chosen to celebrate the most important day of her life without me. The town was lovely, truly small stone buildings, cobbled streets, cafes with outdoor seating where old men played chess and women gossiped over coffee. The kind of place you see in French postcards and assume must be too perfect to be real. Chateau de Montclair sat on the edge of town, down a long tree-lined drive. I didn't go all the way to the entrance. Didn't want to risk running into anyone, but I could see it from the road. Stunning. 17th century stonework, turrets on either end, enormous windows that probably let in gorgeous light, gardens sprawling out in geometric patterns. The chapel off to one side, smaller but equally beautiful. Emma had chosen well. Of course she had. She'd been free to choose anything she wanted because I'd given her a blank check. I turned away and walked back toward town. There was a hilltop about 2 kilometers away, just as I'd seen on Google Earth, and I hiked up to it. The field at the top was exactly as the satellite images had shown: cleared land, decent access road, perfect sightlines to the chateau below. Richard's team was already there, setting up equipment. They worked with professional efficiency, barely acknowledging me as I watched. It's going to be spectacular, Richard said, appearing beside me. Yes, I agreed. It is. We stood there for a while, watching the crew work, watching the sun move across the valley, watching the chateau in the distance looking like something out of a fairy tale. Emma called me, Richard said casually. I turned to look at him. What? This morning, somehow tracked down my number, asked if I knew where you were. What did you tell her? That I couldn't share client locations. She asked if I was working with you on something. I said I couldn't discuss ongoing projects. How did she react? Threatened to report me to, I don't even know, some imaginary authority for consulting firms. I told her good luck with that and hung up. I smiled. She's desperate. She is. Question is, are you? Desperate? No. Sure about that? Because there's still time to back out. Cancel the setup, call your daughter, make peace. I don't want peace. What do you want? I thought about that. What did I want? Not revenge, not really, not peace, not yet. What I wanted was for Emma to see me, really see me, not as a wallet or a problem or an obligation, not as the understanding father who could be excluded without consequence. I wanted her to see me as I actually was, a person who had feelings and limits and a breaking point. I wanted her to understand that I was still here, still present, still relevant, just not available. I want her to remember this weekend for the rest of her life, I said finally. I want her to tell her children about it someday, about the time her father wasn't at her wedding, but was somehow more present than anyone else there. Richard grinned. Then we're definitely on the right track. That evening, my phone, which I'd turned back on to coordinate with Richard, lit up with messages. Emma had sent 14 texts. Claire had sent 9. Marcus had sent 3. There were also messages from people I barely knew. Emma's maid of honor asking if I could please call Emma. One of Marcus's groomsmen saying, "Mate, not sure what's going on, but Emma's having a breakdown." Even Rebecca, Claire's partner, with a curt, "You're being childish." I deleted them all without responding. Then I opened Emma's most recent email. Dad, I don't know what I did wrong. I've been going through every conversation we've had, every text, every call, trying to figure out where things went so bad that you'd do this, that you'd just disappear right before my wedding and cancel all the payments and refuse to talk to me. Mom says you're upset about the guest list, that I hurt your feelings with that text about Google Earth. I swear I didn't mean it the way it came out. It was supposed to be funny. I was trying to lighten the mood because I knew you'd be disappointed about the capacity limits and I didn't know how else to say it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have called you. I should have explained better. I should have fought harder to make sure you could be there. But Dad, we're 5 days away from the wedding. 5 days. And I don't have enough money to cover what you've canceled. Marcus's family is trying to help, but they'd already stretched their budget, and I can't ask them for more. Mom is borrowing from friends. I've called in every favor I have. We might have to cancel the photographer, or the flowers, or maybe the whole thing. Is that what you want? Do you want me to not have a wedding because I made a stupid joke in a text message? Please call me, please. I need my dad, Emma. I read it 3 times. She still didn't get it. She thought this was about a poorly worded text, about a joke gone wrong. She didn't understand that the text was just the final straw, that it was the culmination of years of being treated as optional, of being excluded from her life while funding it, of being reduced to a role instead of a relationship. She thought apologizing for the text would fix everything, that acknowledging she should have fought harder would make me forget 12 years of not fighting at all. And more than that, more than anything, she was still focused on the money. I need my dad. No. She needed my bank account. If she actually needed me, she would have needed me 18 months ago when the planning started. She would have needed me at dress fittings and venue tours and tasting menus. She would have needed me before I became inconvenient. I closed the laptop without responding. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow was the wedding. Tomorrow, Emma would understand exactly what too busy to pick up meant. I woke up at dawn on Saturday, the day of Emma's wedding. The suite at the Plaza Athénée was quiet, except for the soft hum of Paris waking up beyond the windows. Distant traffic, birds in the trees along Avenue Montaigne, the metallic rattle of shop owners opening their shutters. I made coffee using the in-room machine, stood at the window drinking it, watching the Eiffel Tower merge from the early morning haze, the iron lattice catching the first light like something holy. My phone was off, had been since last night. I'd learned that leaving it on was an invitation to chaos. Emma's texts, Claire's calls, the mounting desperation of people who'd realized too late that they'd miscalculated. Today, I didn't want distractions. Today was about presence, about being exactly where I said I'd be, too busy to pick up. I showered, dressed carefully, dark jeans, a charcoal cashmere sweater, leather jacket. Not formal, not wedding attire. Just me, comfortable, unburdened. By 7 a.m., I was in the car heading out of Paris toward Chevreuse. The drive was beautiful. Autumn in the Ile-de-France is a study in contrasts. The last green of summer fighting with the first gold of fall. Morning mist hanging low over fields, stone villages that looked unchanged from centuries ago. I could understand why Emma had chosen this place for her wedding. If you were going to exclude your father and spend his money, you might as well do it somewhere picturesque. I pulled into Chevreuse around 8:30. The town was just stirring, cafes opening, a few locals buying bread from the boulangerie, someone walking a small dog along the river. I parked near the town square and walked to the cafe where I'd arranged to meet Richard. He was already there, drinking espresso and reading a newspaper like a man without a care in the world. "Morning," he said, not looking up. "Morning, everything on schedule?" "Like clockwork. Team's been working since 6. We'll be operational by noon. Weather? Perfect. Clear skies, light wind. Couldn't have asked for better conditions." I ordered coffee and a croissant and sat across from him. "Any issues?" "None. Well, one minor thing." "What?" "Someone from the chateau called this morning asking if we had proper permits for aerial activities in the vicinity. I sent them our documentation. They shut up fast." I smiled. "They're getting nervous." "Can you blame them? They probably think you're going to skywrite something obscene over the ceremony." "Am I? Are you?" "No, I'm classier than that." Richard folded his newspaper. "For what it's worth, I think you're handling this perfectly. You're being paid to think that. I'm being paid to make arrangements. My opinion of your choices is complimentary." He finished his espresso. "But genuinely, what you're doing takes balls. Most people in your position would either cave or explode. You're doing neither. Just quietly, methodically making your point." "It's not about making a point." "Then what's it about?" I thought about that. I'd been thinking about it all week, really. What was this about? Revenge? No. Revenge was hot, emotional, destructive. Justice, closer. But justice implied some kind of legal or moral wrong that needed righting. What I was doing was simpler and more complicated than either of those things. I was setting a boundary. I was saying, you don't get to treat me like this. You don't get to erase me from your life while using my resources. You don't get to mock me and then demand I show up when you need something. I was teaching a lesson that should have been taught years ago, that people, even fathers, even optional parents, have limits. It's about self-respect, I said finally. Richard nodded. That's a good answer. By noon, I was on the hillside overlooking the chateau. Richard's team had transformed the cleared field into something extraordinary. Equipment everywhere, carefully positioned, everything connected and coordinated. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, running final checks, confirming communications, preparing for the main event. Want to see it? Richard asked. Show me. We walked to the center of the setup. He pulled up a tablet, showed me the schematics, walked me through what would happen and when. At 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the ceremony, we go live, he said. Everything's timed to the second. Weather's cooperating beautifully. Sightlines are perfect. Everyone at the chateau will see it. Hell, everyone in the valley will see it. And it's all legal? I told you. Completely above board. I've got permits, insurance, the works. No one can complain about anything except their feelings. Perfect. He looked at me carefully. Last chance to back out. I'm not backing out. You're sure? Because once we start, there's no stopping it. No taking it back. Emma will know. Claire will know. Everyone at that wedding will know. Good. You won't be able to claim you didn't know what you were doing. You won't be able to say you got carried away or acted impulsively. This is premeditated, planned, executed. Richard, I said patiently, I know exactly what I'm doing. I've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks, I'm sure. He studied me for another moment, then nodded. All right then. Let's make sure your daughter has a wedding she'll never forget. At 1 p.m., I drove closer to the chateau. Not all the way to the entrance. I didn't want to risk being seen, but close enough to watch the arrivals. I parked on a side road with a view of the main drive and settled in. The guests started arriving around 2. Expensive cars rolling up the tree-lined drive, disgorging well-dressed people who'd clearly spent significant money and time preparing for this day. The women in designer dresses and elaborate fascinators, the men in morning suits or bespoke tuxedos. I recognized a few faces, some of Claire's family, some friends from Emma's university days, Marcus's parents, whom I'd met exactly once. Everyone looked happy, excited. They took photos in the gardens, milled around the entrance, disappeared into the chateau. At 2:45, Emma arrived. A vintage Rolls-Royce, cream-colored and gleaming, pulled up to the entrance. Emma emerged in her Vera Wang dress, the 15,000 pounds one I'd paid for, looking absolutely stunning. The dress was perfect. She was radiant. Her hair was up in some complicated style, flowers woven through it, her makeup flawless. Claire was with her, looking equally put together in a champagne-colored gown. They posed for photos on the chateau steps, Claire adjusting Emma's train, both of them laughing about something, mother and daughter, picture perfect. I watched from a distance, feeling absolutely nothing. No, that wasn't true. I felt something, but it wasn't sadness or longing or regret. It was peace. Because I finally understood what I'd been refusing to accept for years. Emma didn't need me. She needed what I could provide. Money, stability, the status of having a successful father, but she didn't need me. She didn't want my presence or my advice or my involvement beyond signing checks. And once I accepted that, once I truly internalized it, everything became clear. I wasn't losing a daughter by not attending her wedding. I'd lost her years ago. I just hadn't been willing to admit it until she made it impossible to ignore. At 3:30, the guests started moving toward the chapel. I checked my watch. 15 minutes until ceremony time. 15 minutes until Richard's team went live. I drove back to the hillside. Richard was waiting with the tablet and a satisfied smile. Timing is perfect, he said. We go live in 10 minutes. I want to see it from here. Figured you would. I've got a good vantage point set up. He led me to the edge of the hillside where a folding chair had been positioned. The view was spectacular. The entire valley spread out below. The chateau clearly visible in the distance. The chapel's spire rising from the trees. I sat down. took out binoculars I'd brought specifically for this. Through the lenses, I could see the chapel, guests filing in, the doors standing open, flowers everywhere, white roses and hydrangeas, the arrangements cascading down the sides of the building. Emma's $12,000 flowers, arranged by the Parisian florist who'd done Fashion Week. I lowered the binoculars. 5 minutes, Richard said quietly. I nodded. The valley was so quiet, peaceful, just wind in the trees and birds singing and the distant sound of the chapel bell ringing to signal the ceremony was about to begin. Emma would be in the chateau's bridal suite right now, having final touches done to her makeup and hair. Claire would be fussing over the dress. The bridesmaids would be taking last-minute selfies. Marcus would be in the chapel, standing at the altar, waiting for his bride. None of them knew what was about to happen. 2 minutes, Richard said. I picked up the binoculars again. Through them, I could see the chapel doors closing. The ceremony was starting. 1 minute, I kept the binoculars trained on the chapel, waited. Go, Richard said. The sound came first, a deep, rhythmic thrum that cut through the valley quiet like a knife. Whump, 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 whump. I lowered the binoculars and looked up. The helicopter peered over the tree line, rising from behind the hillside, where we'd positioned it, not small, not subtle. A proper executive helicopter, the kind used for corporate transport and aerial tours. It climbed higher, the rotor wash sending ripples across the field grass, the noise growing louder as it gained altitude. Then it turned and flew directly over the chateau. Through the binoculars, I could see the chapel doors opening, people emerging, looking up, confused. The helicopter circled once, twice, low enough that everyone could see it clearly, but high enough that it wasn't dangerous. And trailing behind it, held by cables attached to the helicopter's frame, was a banner. Massive, impossible to miss. Professional-grade lettering visible from hundreds of meters away. It said, "Congratulations, Emma and Marcus, from your father. David watching from Google Earth as requested. Enjoy your big day." The helicopter made 3 full circles over the chateau, slow and deliberate, making sure everyone, every single guest, every member of the staff, the bride and groom themselves, could read the banner clearly. Then it flew off toward Paris, the banner trailing behind it like a giant passive-aggressive ribbon. The entire valley went silent. Even from the hillside, even through binoculars, I could see the chaos outside the chapel. People pointing, people pulling out phones to take photos, people standing frozen, unsure what to do. I could see a woman in a champagne-colored dress, Claire, gesturing wildly at someone. Could see a man in a tuxedo, probably Marcus, staring up at the sky where the helicopter had been. And I could see Emma, standing on the chapel steps in her Vera Wang dress, looking up at the empty sky where the banner had just been, her hands covering her mouth. I lowered the binoculars. How long will that helicopter stay visible? I asked. Another 10 minutes as it heads back to Paris, Richard said. But the video's already online. Video? He showed me his phone. A live stream from one of the cameras mounted on the helicopter. The banner clearly visible. The chateau in the background. Everything documented in high definition. Social media, Richard said. It'll be everywhere in an hour. I nodded. Good. Feel better? I feel present. We packed up the equipment over the next 2 hours. Richard's team worked with the same efficiency they'd shown in setting up, dismantling everything, loading it into trucks, erasing any trace that we'd been there except for the tire marks in the grass. I stayed until the last vehicle left, sitting in the folding chair, watching the chateau in the distance. The ceremony must have continued eventually. Life always continues. People adapt. They make jokes about crazy interruptions and return to their schedules and pretend everything's fine because what else can they do? But they wouldn't forget. That was the point. And not to ruin the wedding, it was already ruined the moment Emma sent that text. But to make sure she remembered, to make sure everyone remembered, that I had been there, that I had been present, that I had done exactly what she asked, watched from a distance, but on my terms, with my own interpretation of what being part of it meant. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd turned it back on out of curiosity. 43 missed calls, 76 text messages, 19 voicemails, 12 emails. I scrolled through the message preview without opening them. Emma. Dad. What the fuck? Claire, this is unforgivable. Marcus. Mr. Sterling, please call me Rebecca. Childish doesn't even begin to cover this. Various relatives. Did you really? And OMG, David and I can't believe you did that. And then, at the very bottom, one message from a number I didn't recognize. This is Sarah, Emma's maid of honor. I don't know you and I don't know what's going on between you and Emma, but that was the most epic dad move I've ever seen in my life. Well played. I smiled. Then I turned the phone off again and drove back to Paris. I stayed in Paris for 3 more days. Not because I needed to, not because there was any business requiring my presence, but because Paris is beautiful in autumn. And I'd forgotten what it felt like to be somewhere, just because I wanted to be there. Not because someone needed something from me. I walked the streets, sat in cafes, visited museums I hadn't seen since Emma was small, and we'd done a family trip here, back when she still held my hand crossing the street and called me Papa because she thought it sounded more sophisticated in French. I didn't check my phone, didn't read the emails or messages or voicemails that were undoubtedly accumulating. I just existed, present, quiet, free. On Monday, 3 days after the wedding, I finally turned my phone on. 214 notifications. I scrolled through them systematically, not reading in depth, just scanning for anything genuinely urgent. Health emergencies, business catastrophes, things that couldn't wait, nothing critical, just a lot of people having feelings about what I'd done. Emma had called 43 times, sent 62 text messages. 8 of her emails had subject lines like, "We need to talk," and "This isn't over," and "How could you?" Claire had called 37 times. Her messages were shorter, angrier. "This was unacceptable. You've embarrassed Emma. You've shown your true colors." Marcus had called 12 times. His messages were different, more confused than angry. "Can we please talk about what happened? I'd like to understand your perspective. I think there's been a lot of miscommunication." There were messages from relatives, from Emma's friends, from people I hadn't spoken to in years who'd apparently heard about the helicopter and had opinions. And there were messages from my own circles. Margaret had sent 3 texts. "I assume the helicopter was your doing. Brilliant. Let me know when you're ready to return to work." A few business associates had sent congratulations that confused me until I realized someone had posted the helicopter video online and it had gone viral. Apparently, Dad responds to wedding snub with epic helicopter banner was trending on social media. One message from Richard, "Told you it would be memorable." And then, at the very bottom of my email inbox, one message that made me stop scrolling. Subject line, "Please read this." Emma, I opened it. "Dad, I don't even know what to say. I don't know if you're reading these. I don't know if you even care anymore. The wedding was ruined, not just interrupted, ruined. Everyone spent the whole reception talking about the helicopter, about you, about what it meant. People were taking sides, asking questions. Marcus's family was mortified. Mom spent the night crying. Some guests left early. I spent my wedding night fighting with Marcus because he said I should have seen this coming, that I should have known you'd be hurt, that I'd been dismissive of you for years and this was the consequence. He's right, I know he is, but it doesn't make it hurt less. You humiliated me, in front of everyone I care about, on the most important day of my life. And the worst part? Everyone agrees you were justified. Even my own friends are saying I had it coming, saying you paid for the whole wedding, and I uninvited you as a joke, and what did I expect? But Dad, you're my father. You're supposed to be above this. You're supposed to be the mature one. You're supposed to love me unconditionally no matter what I do. Instead, you hired a helicopter and turned my wedding into some kind of public revenge stunt. I know I hurt you. I know the Google Earth text was awful. I've apologized 100 times. I've called and texted and emailed, and you've ignored all of it. What more do you want from me? What will it take for you to forgive me? Emma. I read it twice. Then I opened a new email and wrote a response. Emma, I received your message. I've received all your messages. I've chosen not to respond until now because I wanted to give both of us time to think clearly. First, let me address the helicopter. It wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been showing up at the chateau and making a scene. Revenge would have been contacting all the guests ahead of time and telling them they were attending a wedding funded by a father who'd been uninvited. Revenge would have been petty and destructive and aimed at causing maximum harm. What I did was make a statement. The statement was simple. I was present. I watched from a distance. I did exactly what you told me to do. Participated from Google Earth. The banner made that clear. If that embarrassed you, if that ruined your wedding, then perhaps you should ask yourself why. Why is a father making his presence known, even from a distance, so humiliating? Why is the public acknowledgement that I exist, that I paid for your wedding, that I was there despite being excluded so devastating? Second, let me address your question about forgiveness. You've apologized for the text. You've said it was a joke. You've said you didn't mean it the way it came out. But Emma, the text wasn't the problem. The text was just the moment I finally admitted to myself what had been true for years. I am optional to you. I have been optional since the divorce. Optional since your mother convinced you that my career made me unreliable. Optional through your teenage years when you stopped calling. Optional through university when you'd go months without contact. Optional through your engagement when I wasn't consulted about a single wedding decision despite funding the entire event. The text was just the first time you said out loud what your actions had been saying for over a decade. That I exist to serve your needs, but don't deserve to be included in your life. You want to know what it will take for me to forgive you? It's not an apology. Apologies are easy. Words are easy. What I want is for you to understand why I did what I did. To understand that parents, even fathers, even optional parents, are human beings with feelings and limits. To understand that you can't treat someone as disposable and then be shocked when they decline to remain available. What I want is for you to look at our relationship honestly and ask yourself, when was the last time you wanted me around, not because you needed something, but just because you wanted your father? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life, my work, my happiness? When was the last time you treated me like a parent instead of a bank account with emotional baggage? I love you, Emma. I have always loved you. I will always love you. But love doesn't mean accepting whatever treatment is offered and being grateful for scraps of relationship. Love doesn't mean funding your own exclusion. Love doesn't mean pretending I don't matter while showing up every time you need something. So here's what happens now. You're married. Congratulations. I genuinely hope you and Marcus have a wonderful life together. The financial support you've been accustomed to receiving, it ends here. I've redirected those funds to causes that value them. Your student loans, your car, your rent, all of that is now your responsibility. Marcus comes from money. Between his family and your mother, I'm sure you'll manage fine. The expectations that I'll be available whenever you need advice or support or money, those end here too. I'm not cutting you off entirely. I'm just making it clear that our relationship, if we're going to have one, needs to be mutual. You call me because you want to talk to me, or you don't call at all. You include me in your life because you value me as a person, or you don't include me. I'm done being optional, Emma. I'm done pretending that your intermittent contact is enough. I'm done funding a relationship that only exists on your terms. If you want a real relationship with me, one where I'm actually your father and not just your checkbook, then we can start building that. But it starts with honesty, with accountability, with you genuinely understanding what you've done and why it mattered. Until then, I'll be here, living my life, working on things that fulfill me, spending time with people who value my presence, too busy to pick up when you call because you need something, but never too busy for a daughter who actually wants her father. The choice is yours. David. I read it through 3 times, making small edits, ensuring the tone was firm but not cruel. Then I hit send. And I closed my laptop and went out to find a cafe that served excellent wine and even better cheese. Because I was in Paris and I was free, and I had nothing to do but be present in my own life. Emma didn't respond for 2 weeks. I stayed in Paris for the first week, then flew to Barcelona because I'd always wanted to see Gaudi's architecture and had never made time for it. Then to Porto, because someone told me the sunsets there were transformative, then back to London because eventually real life required attention. Margaret had handled everything beautifully in my absence. Meetings rescheduled, clients reassured, projects advanced. The firm had barely noticed I was gone, which was either a testament to her competence or a sign I'd built something sustainable enough to function without me constantly micromanaging. Probably both. Good trip? She asked when I walked into the office on a Tuesday morning. Excellent trip. The helicopter made quite the impression. I heard. There was a think piece about it in The Guardian, when generosity becomes coercion, a father's protest against modern wedding culture. I raised my eyebrows. Impressive that they managed to miss the point entirely. Most people do. But the comments section was fascinating. About 70% were on your side. And the other 30? Thought you were being petty. Said you should have been the bigger person. The usual, naturally. She handed me a stack of mail and messages. Emma called here 6 times. Claire called 3. I told them all you were unavailable and would be in touch when appropriate. Thank you. Are you going to be in touch? Eventually, when there's something worth saying. Margaret nodded. She didn't approve or disapprove. She just understood, which was one of the reasons she'd been invaluable for 15 years. I went to my office and got back to work. The silence from Emma was initially a relief. No desperate calls, no emotional emails, no attempts to manipulate or guilt or negotiate, just quiet. I threw myself into work, took on 3 new projects, all challenging, all requiring the kind of deep strategic thinking that had made my firm successful. Traveled to Manchester for a week to handle a factory restructuring. Spent a weekend in Edinburgh working with a failing tourism company that needed a complete operational overhaul. I ran in the mornings, read at night, cooked meals for myself that didn't come from a box or a restaurant. Started learning Spanish through an app because I'd always meant to and never had time. I built a life that wasn't waiting for Emma to call. And slowly, very slowly, the hurt started to fade. Not the anger, that was still there, banked like coals, ready to flare if prodded. But the acute pain of being excluded, the sharp sting of being mocked and dismissed, that started to dull. I realized I'd been carrying that pain for years, not just since the text. Since the divorce, since the first missed weekend visit, since the first canceled dinner, since the first time Emma looked at me like I was an obligation rather than her father. I'd been walking around wounded and pretending I was fine, and the pretending had been almost worse than the wound. Now I wasn't pretending anymore. Emma's response finally came on a Thursday evening 3 weeks after I'd sent my email. I was at home, cooking dinner, risotto, which required attention and patience and gave me something to focus on besides the various catastrophes at work, when my phone buzzed. Email notification. Emma's name. I considered waiting until after dinner, then decided if I was going to read it, I might as well read it now and not let it hover over my meal. I opened it. Dad, it's taken me 3 weeks to respond because I didn't know what to say. I still don't really, but I'm going to try. I've been going to therapy. That probably sounds strange to you. Why would I need therapy? Because my dad flew a helicopter over my wedding. But my therapist helped me understand that the helicopter was just one event in a much longer pattern. She asked me to describe our relationship, to really describe it, not just give surface level answers. And as I was talking, I started to realize how little I actually know about you. I couldn't tell her your favorite book, or your favorite food, or what you do when you're not working, or who your friends are, or what makes you happy. I know you work in corporate restructuring. I know you like running. I know you drink your coffee black. But that's not knowing someone. That's knowing facts about someone. Then she asked me to describe the last time we had a real conversation. Not about logistics or money or me asking you for something, just a conversation where we talked about life. I couldn't remember one, not in years. Dad, you're right. You've been optional to me, and I didn't even realize it because that's just how things have always been since the divorce. Mom would make plans for us, for me and her and Rebecca. And you were just separate. You were the other parent, the weekend parent, the one who paid for things, but wasn't really part of the daily texture of my life. And I went along with it because it was easier, because Mom made everything so comfortable, and you were so understanding. And it never occurred to me that understanding might actually mean hurt, but too polite to say anything. I'm not blaming Mom. This isn't about her. This is about me and the choices I made and the relationship I let atrophy because I didn't think I needed to work at it. You were just always there, always available, always willing to help when I called. So I assumed you always would be. I never thought about what it cost you to always be available. I never thought about whether you might need something from me too. I'm sorry, Dad, not just for the text, for all of it. For 12 years of treating you like a supporting character in my life instead of a person with feelings and needs. I don't know if you'll forgive me. I don't know if you even want a relationship anymore after everything that's happened, but I want to try if you're willing. I want to know your favorite book and what you do on weekends and what makes you laugh. I want to call you not because I need something, but because I miss you. I want a real relationship with my father, not the optional one, the real one. If you're willing to give me that chance, I promise I'll do the work. I'll show up. I'll be present. I'll value you the way you should have been valued all along. I understand if the answer is no. I understand if I burn that bridge permanently, but I hope you'll at least consider it. Love, Emma. I set down the phone and returned to stirring the risotto. The rice needed constant attention at this stage. Too much stirring and it would get gummy, too little and it would stick. It was meditative work, rhythmic, the kind of thing that let your mind wander while your hands stayed busy. I thought about Emma's email, about therapy and realizations and apologies. It was a good email, thoughtful, self-aware, the kind of email that showed genuine reflection rather than just scrambling to fix things because they were broken. But words were still just words. The question was whether I believed Emma would actually follow through, whether she would do the work she was promising, whether this was genuine growth or just skilled emotional management aimed at getting me back in the optional parent box. And more than that, whether I even wanted to try. Because here's the thing about boundaries. Once you set them, you have to decide whether you're going to hold them or let people wander back across just because they apologize nicely. I thought about the last 3 weeks, about Paris and Barcelona and Porto, about running in the mornings without my phone buzzing with demands, about cooking risotto on a Thursday evening because I wanted to, not because I was too tired from a day of solving everyone else's problems. I thought about the peace I'd found in not being available, in not being optional. Did I want to give that up? Did I want to risk letting Emma back in only to discover that her therapy insights faded once things got comfortable again? That she'd slip back into old patterns once the crisis had passed? The risotto was done. I plated it, poured a glass of wine, sat at my kitchen table overlooking the city lights. And I thought about what kind of relationship I actually wanted with my daughter. Not the one we'd had. That was clear. But maybe not no relationship at all either. Maybe something new, something built on mutual respect and actual presence rather than obligation and financial support. Maybe that was possible. Maybe it was worth trying, but not yet. Not until I was sure I was choosing from a place of strength rather than old habits. Not until I was sure Emma understood that this was a beginning, not a resolution. Not until enough time had passed that we both really felt the weight of what optional had meant. I finished my dinner, cleaned up, poured another glass of wine. Then I sat down and wrote a response. Emma, I read your email. Thank you for being honest about what you've realized. It means something that you're doing the work of understanding rather than just apologizing and moving on. I believe you're sincere. I believe you genuinely want to build a different relationship. And I appreciate that. But I'm not ready yet. Not because I don't care, not because I don't love you, but because I need to be sure, really sure, that we're both coming to this from a healthy place. You need time to do your work, to understand the patterns, to build new habits of actually showing up rather than just intending to. And I need time to make sure I'm not falling back into old patterns either. The patterns where I accept crumbs of relationship and pretend they're enough, where I'm so grateful you're reaching out that I don't hold you accountable for following through. So here's what I'm proposing. We take 6 months, real time, space for both of us to figure out who we are outside the dynamic we've been stuck in. During those 6 months, you continue your therapy. You work on understanding yourself and your choices. You figure out what you actually want from a relationship with me, not just what you think you should want. And I continue building a life that doesn't revolve around being available for you. I work on remembering that I deserve better than optional. I figure out what I actually want from a relationship with you. At the end of 6 months, we meet in person, somewhere neutral, not London, not your place, somewhere new for both of us. And we have an honest conversation about whether we both want to try building something new, whether we're both willing to put in the work, whether we can create a real relationship, or whether too much damage has been done. No pressure, no expectations, just honest assessment. If the answer is yes, we start over. Slowly, with clear boundaries and mutual respect and actual effort from both sides. If the answer is no, we part as people who loved each other once but couldn't bridge the gap. No hard feelings, no blame, just acceptance. Does that work for you? David. I read it through once. It felt right, firm but not harsh, boundaried but not closed off. I hit send, then I turned off my phone and went to bed. Emma agreed to the 6 months. Her response was short. I understand. I'll see you in 6 months. Thank you for giving me this chance. And then Shalnen's real silence. Not the desperate, crisis-driven silence of the weeks after the wedding, but actual peaceful quiet where neither of us reached out because we were both doing what we needed to do. I heard through Margaret that Emma and Marcus had moved to a smaller flat in London, that they'd started paying their own bills without subsidies from Claire or Marcus's family or me, that Emma had taken a job at an NGO focused on refugee support, real work, not the vague consulting she'd been doing before. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Claire was furious with me, that she'd told anyone who would listen that I was punishing Emma for being young and making mistakes, that the helicopter was unforgivable, that I was being cruel and manipulative and using money as a weapon. I didn't respond, didn't defend myself. Let people think whatever they wanted to think, because I'd learned something important over the last few months. Other people's opinions of you only matter if you're still trying to be optional in their lives. Once you decide you're not available for judgment, not available for guilt, not available to be the villain in someone else's narrative, their opinions stop having power. I spent the 6 months well. I traveled more. Iceland in December, Vietnam in February, Croatia in April. Places I'd always wanted to see but never made time for because there was always a crisis, always a need, always someone requiring my attention. I took up painting, terribly at first, then less terribly, then actually pretty decent, at least according to the instructor at the weekend classes I joined. I read voraciously, fiction mostly, which I hadn't done since university, got lost in other people's stories instead of constantly living my own. I dated a woman named Catherine for a few months. She was a barrister, whip-smart and funny, and she taught me that it was possible to build something with someone who actually wanted you around, rather than just needing you for specific purposes. It didn't last. We wanted different things long-term, but it was good while it lasted, and we parted as friends. I strengthened relationships with colleagues who'd always been more than just coworkers, but whom I'd never had time for beyond work conversations. Started having regular dinners with them, going to theater, actually showing up for their lives instead of just being a friendly face at the office. I built a life that was full and rich and entirely my own. And somewhere in those 6 months, I stopped being angry at Emma. Not because I'd forgiven her. Forgiveness felt too simple, too final, too much like declaring the matter closed. But because I'd stopped needing her to be different in order for me to be okay. I was okay regardless. And that, more than anything else, felt like freedom. We met in Dublin, neither of our cities, neutral territory, a place neither of us had history with. I arrived 2 days early, got a hotel and temple bar, walked the streets, visited museums, sat in pubs listening to traditional music, prepared myself mentally for whatever the conversation would bring. Emma arrived the day before our scheduled meeting. She texted to let me know she was in the city, the first direct communication we'd had in 6 months. I'm here. Still good for coffee tomorrow at 10? Yes, the cafe you suggested? Yes. See you then, no emojis, no love you, no attempts at warmth or connection, just logistics. I appreciated the restraint. The cafe was called Kaf and sat on a quiet street away from the tourist areas. Good coffee, comfortable seating, not too loud. I'd chosen it specifically because it felt conducive to difficult conversations. I arrived at 9:50, ordered a black coffee, sat at a table by the window. Emma arrived at 9:58. I saw her through the glass before she saw me, walking up the street looking uncertain, checking her phone for directions. She was dressed simply. Jeans, a sweater, minimal makeup. Her hair was shorter than at the wedding, cut to her shoulders. She looked older, more tired, but also more grounded somehow. She spotted me through the window, took a deep breath, came inside. Dad, she said. Emma. She ordered tea at the counter, then joined me at the table. We sat in silence for a moment while she fixed her tea, milk, no sugar, exactly the way she'd always taken it. Some things don't change. Thank you for coming, she said finally. Of course. I wasn't sure you would. I said I would. I know, but still. She wrapped her hands around the teacup. I'm nervous. So am I. Really? Really? She smiled slightly. I suppose that's fair. We sat with that for a moment. The cafe buzzed quietly around us. Other conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine, someone laughing at a table across the room. How have you been? Emma asked. Good. Really good, actually. I'm glad. She meant it. I could tell. I've been following your social media. You've been traveling a lot. I have. Vietnam looked incredible. It was. And you're painting now? Badly. The ones you posted were beautiful. You're kind to say that. More silence. This time less comfortable. The small talk exhausted, the real conversation looming. Emma set down her tea. I don't know how to start. Neither do I. Should I apologize again? I've been rehearsing apologies for 6 months, but they all feel inadequate. I don't need more apologies. Then what do you need? I thought about that. What did I need? I need to understand if you've actually changed, I said finally, if this is genuine growth or just guilt. How can I prove that? You probably can't, not in one conversation. That's why I suggested 6 months. Real change takes time. Have you changed? The question surprised me. I think so, yes. How? I stopped waiting for you to decide I was worth including. I stopped being available by default. I built a life that isn't contingent on our relationship improving. She nodded slowly. That must have been hard. It was liberating. I'm glad, I mean that. I'm glad you're not waiting anymore. Waiting for me to be better. Are you better? Emma looked down at her tea. I don't know if better is the right word. I'm different. More aware. I understand things now that I didn't understand before. Like what? Like how much work relationships take. How you can't just assume people will always be there. How privilege, emotional privilege, not just financial, can make you blind to other people's needs. That's a start. I've been working with my therapist on understanding my role in the family dynamics after the divorce. How I internalized Mom's narrative about you being unreliable because of work. How I used that as permission to not prioritize our relationship. And what have you learned? That I was wrong, that Mom was wrong, or not wrong exactly, but limited in her perspective. She saw you through the lens of a failed marriage and passed that lens to me. And I never questioned it because it was easier not to. Easier how? Easier to not feel guilty about choosing her side. About spending more time with her and Rebecca than with you. About letting our relationship become superficial because deep down I didn't want to deal with the discomfort of divided loyalties. I sipped my coffee, let her words settle. I've also been working on understanding what I actually want from you, Emma continued. Not what I think I should want. Not what looks good on social media or what I can tell people. But what I actually genuinely want. And what's that? She looked directly at me for the first time since sitting down. I want to know you, really know you. Not as dad who pays for things or dad who I'm supposed to call on birthdays. But as David, as a person. Why? Because I'm 26 years old and I don't know my own father, and that's pathetic and sad and entirely my fault. Not entirely. Mostly my fault. Enough that I own it, I nodded. Okay, 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 I believe you want that. Now the question is whether you'll follow through. How can I prove I will? You can't. Not today. That's why we're here. To decide if we both want to try building something new, knowing it might fail. Emma leaned back. Do you want to try? Did I? 6 months ago, the answer would have been complicated. Mixed. Part of me wanting to say yes out of hope, part of me wanting to say no out of self-protection. But now, after 6 months of building a life I loved, after 6 months of not being optional, after 6 months of genuine peace, now the answer was simpler. I want to try, I said, but with conditions. What conditions? Well, we start over, completely. No carrying forward the old dynamics. No, but we've always done it this way. We build something new from scratch. Okay. We meet regularly, in person when possible, video call when not. every 2 weeks minimum. Not for logistics, not when you need something, just to talk. Okay. You ask me questions about my life, my work, my interests, and I'll ask you questions. We learn each other as adults, not as parent and child locked into old roles. Okay. And if it's not working, if either of us realizes we're falling back into old patterns, we address it immediately. No letting it fester. No pretending it's fine when it's not. Okay, anything else? I hesitated, then financial independence, permanently. Emma's face went carefully neutral. Explain what you mean. I mean, I'm not funding your life anymore. I'm not paying your rent or your student loans or your car or your emergency expenses. You and Marcus figure that out yourselves. We have been for the last 6 months. Good, that continues. And if we have kids someday, if we need help, then we discuss it as adults with proper boundaries and clear expectations. But I'm not going back to being the default solution to every financial problem. She nodded slowly. That's fair. If that's a deal breaker, it's not. I don't want your money, Dad. I want you. The words hung in the air between us. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, of performance, of saying what I wanted to hear. I didn't see them. What I saw was a young woman who'd grown up in 6 months, who'd done hard work, who was trying, genuinely trying, to be better. Okay, I said finally. Let's try. Emma's face broke into the first real smile I'd seen from her, and she was 14 years old, before the divorce became final, before everything got complicated. Really? Really? I'm not going to screw this up, I promise. You might. We both might. That's not failure, that's being human. We just have to commit to trying again when we do. I can do that. So can I. We sat in silence for a moment. Different silence now. Not uncomfortable, just present. Can I ask you something? Emma said. Of course. The helicopter. Did you plan it specifically to embarrass me? Or was it something else? I considered the question. Something else. What? I needed you to see me, to understand that I was there, that I'd been there the whole time, even when you decided I was optional. The helicopter was me saying, you can exclude me from the event, but you can't erase me from the reality of what funded it. It worked. Everyone saw it. It's literally the first thing people bring up when they talk about my wedding. Does that bother you? It did, for months. I was so angry, so humiliated. She paused. But now, honestly, I think it was necessary. I needed something that dramatic to wake me up, to make me see what I'd been doing. I'm sorry it had to be public. I'm not. If it had been private, I could have rationalized it away, made it about you being difficult instead of about my behavior. The public nature made that impossible. Still, I'm sorry you were hurt. And I'm sorry I hurt you first, for years. We looked at each other, really looked. Maybe for the first time in over a decade. What's your favorite book? Emma asked suddenly. The question surprised me. What? Your favorite book? I realize I don't know. I want to know. I smiled. Anna Karenina, Tolstoy. Why? Because it's honest about how complicated people are, how we can love and hurt each other simultaneously, how good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes. Have you read it recently? Last month, actually. I reread it every few years. What else do you read? Lately? A lot of contemporary fiction. Vietnamese authors after I visited Hanoi. Irish writers now that I'm here. Recommend one? For you specifically, try Normal People by Sally Rooney. It's about communication and what happens when people don't say what they mean. Emma pulled out her phone, made a note. I'll read it. What else should I know about you? What do you want to know? Everything. We spent the next 3 hours in that cafe. I told her about my painting classes and my terrible first attempts at landscapes, about Catherine and what I'd learned about healthy adult relationships, about the restructuring project in Manchester that had turned into my favorite work of the year. She told me about her job at the NGO and how much more fulfilling it was than the consulting work she'd been doing before, about her and Marcus learning to build a life on their income rather than family money, about therapy and the hard realizations and the work of unlearning patterns. We talked about books and movies and places we wanted to travel and about politics and philosophy and whether having children was something she even wanted or just something she'd assumed she should want. We talked like adults. like people who were interested in each other, like friends, not like optional parent and distant daughter. When we finally left the cafe, it was past 1 p.m. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. Emma's tea was long forgotten. We stood on the sidewalk, neither of us quite ready to leave yet. Same time in 2 weeks, Emma said. Video call? Yes. I'll actually show up, not cancel at the last minute. I know. How do you know? Because if you don't, we're done. And I think you understand that now. She nodded. I do. Good. She hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me. Brief, but genuine. Thank you for giving me this chance, she said. Thank you for doing the work to deserve it. We separated. She walked one direction toward her hotel. I walked the other toward mine, and for the first time in 12 years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a daughter again. Not the one I'd lost. That Emma was gone, dissolved in the years of divorce and distance and learned behavior, but a new one, an adult one who was choosing to show up instead of being obligated to, one who valued me as a person instead of as a function, one who understood that love requires presence, not just pronouncement. I walked back through Dublin's streets, the afternoon sun warm on my face, and felt something settle in my chest that had been unsettled for over a decade. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't. We had years of work ahead of us, learning each other, building trust, proving that we both meant what we said. But because for the first time since the divorce, I wasn't trying to be what someone else needed me to be. I was just being David, and that was enough.